Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we are going to specifically talk about the question of leadership in how do we process leadership, right? And I'm convinced, I really think there's no better way to learn leadership in the world today than Dungeons and Dragons. You're like, oh, Scott, there's schools for leadership, right? Yeah, there are. But the reality is not everybody has access to them. They cost a huge amount of money. And the reality is there's a question on if their value is greater than their cost. But to learn leadership in Dungeons & Dragons, it costs $0 and it's accessible to everybody. So I think it's a better school for leadership than anything that's currently available. All right. So let me tell you the story of leadership, and I want to ask you. There were two player characters have vastly different ideas about leadership, and I want to ask you today which one's right. All right. So my Sunday game has wrapped, and I am getting ready to run games at PhilCon and at PAX Unplugged. And I'm also spinning up, and I have ideas already for the overall structure for my 2023 game. But literally during the time of my Sunday game, right? I'm using that to connect to local dungeon masters and get some answers, right, for how to do a better job of managing players at the table, right? So I recently I started haunting my local FLGSs. And I'll go in and I don't walk into an FLGS without at least buying a pair of dice, right? And I have been doing this a lot. So I just been walking in, buying a pair of dice or buying comics. $40 a pop is expensive if you're making as many trips as the FLGS as I am. Also, I've been buying packs of Magic from the Dungeons and Dragons aligned sets. So like Eldraine and Strixhaven and still Brothers War, which is coming up. I did a pre-order. So all kinds of, so I'm in the FLGS. I'm doing my thing. So I found one of the FLGSs where there was a dungeon master, and he was running at a specific time. Saw his game, and I came back the next week at the end, about half an hour from what I expected to be the end of his game. They were still running. I waited, and I said, hey, I'm a local dungeon master. I saw you were running your game. It seemed like everybody was really engaged. I have some questions on how you manage your players. And I'd like to treat you to, my name is Scott. This is my card, right? If you have time, I would like to take you wherever you would like to go locally. I'm paying for the meal, and I just want to ask you questions about your game during the meal, right? And the person seemed a little surprised, and I'm like, that's my card. If this is odd, don't worry about it. I'm sorry I took 3 minutes of your time, but if you're up for it, meal's on me. Right, so the person took me up on it, which I was really excited about, and he emailed me, right, and we set it up, and so we got together, right, and I was like, okay, and I started asking questions, right, and I was really impressed. This person was like, hey, slow down, tell me about you. Where are you at in your Dungeons and Dragons journey? And I was like, well, that's very nice that you asked. So I quickly told him my tale of woe, right? Because he asked, right? And I wanted to be open and honest about, why I was there. And he's like, oh, okay. He goes like, well, I want to encourage you. You're not the only person who has woe at his table, right? And I was like, oh, that's good to hear, right? So he told me this story, and I was fascinated, right? And he said, so what he does is he runs at the local FLGS, right? And he has a max of five players, and he has been running for about 4 years at the FLGS, and what he does is he has 5 players, and he expects every player to sit down, and then they play until their player character dies, right? And he said the way he manages a transition in his game is he tells everybody when your player character dies, you have an opportunity to step back from the table and break from the game at that point, or anyone at the table can request for you to leave. I was like, wow, that's how you guys handle transition? And he's like, yes, and you only stay if it's unanimous. And I was like, holy cows, wow. He said also then, this fascinated me, he said that he lives in an apartment, and that what he does is he optionally allows, so if they break, and he said he tries to break each session at a break point where a quest is done, right? And then what he does is he'll do interstitials for anyone who's interested. So any player characters, he'll do one-on-one games. As many players as want to come over for a weeknight game, right, can come over and they can be in an interstitial. And then on the next session at the FLGS, all the players come together, right, and they pick up from there. But because of this, the player characters are not at the same levels, which was really surprising. So this was invaluable. It was totally worth the $55 I spent for our dinner, right? I was really fascinated. So he said, but I struggle with my players too. And he said that just the week before, this is how the interstitial ended. So he gave the invitation to everybody, and a couple people were like, I can't make the interstitial, and 2 players could, right? An eighth level ranger, okay, and a 5th level fighter, okay. So he said, well over a year ago, from the Waterdeep Dragon Heist book, both of these players were invited to join the Harpers, okay. The Ranger, we're going to call him the Freedom Ranger, said, you Harpers can go kick rocks. I don't want you to be able to ask me for help, and I don't want to have to ask you for help. Okay? The Harper Fighter said, bet. I'm honored by your invitation to become a Harper. I'm gonna make myself valuable to the Harpers, and I'm expecting the Harpers are gonna make themselves valuable to me. That's exactly what happened, right? So both of these two went along. The Ranger is 8th level. The Freedom Ranger, free to do whatever they want because they're not connected to the Harpers, right? Is at 8th level. The Harper Fighter is at 5th level. Okay, all right. So at this point, he said. So basically, at this point, the adventure begins for them. Okay, so a dwarven merchant in Waterdeep has a hammer stolen from his home. He has 2,500 gold pieces worth of gems, art, and like golden candlesticks. And then the thieves also stole a hammer from his home in Waterdeep. Okay, the problem is the hammer is not a warhammer. It's not even a functional weapon. It's literally one of the first 3. It's called the Hammers of Tharg, and it's one of the first 3 hammers that were used in Mount Hotenau by the Mount Hotenau dwarves, right? So it has immense significant value, right? So this dwarven merchant who is not a Harper has allies in the Harpers, and the Harpers hear about this and they're like, we're going to get that back for you. They immediately look for a team to go get the they immediately look for a team to get the hammer, right? The Harper character's like, I'm in, right? The Harpers put up 4 other adventurers, all who are Harpers, and say to the Harper Fighter, you are the lead of this quest. Here is the Harper seal. Go get all your materials refreshed. Get any new weapons you need. Get a potion of healing for every single person in the party, right? And so they're excited, and then the Freedom Ranger is, and then the Dungeon Master says to the Freedom Ranger, "You're welcome to follow this team along, or right, you're welcome to follow the team along, or if you wish, you can wrap for the night because I know you're not a Harper, and I'll run another session for you before our next meeting at the FLGS." Interesting. That was very interesting, right? And he goes, "Oh, no problem. I'll join the Harpers. I'll ask the Harpers if I can join the group, right?" And they go, "They're happy to have you, but but just like all the other Harper adventurers, the Harper Fighter is the leader, and this is a Harper quest. As long as you understand that, you're welcome." He's like, "Yep, bet I'm in." They go into Neverwinter Woods. They immediately find a haunted area of the woods, and there's incredibly difficult terrain. And the group is generally between 1/4 and 1/3 of their hit points down just from survival, from falling down hills, from the cold, and they haven't even come across monsters and are 3rd down on their hit points, right? wow, this is really fascinating, right? So they get in there, and at this point, so many people have failed so many survival checks that the ranger says, listen, Harper, Harper fighter, I know you're the leader, but you need to follow me now, right? I'm going to tell you what to do. You can give the orders to them, right? But he says this at the fire with the other Harpers, and he goes, you need to give leadership to me now because we're in the forest. I'm a ranger. I know what to do. The player, he says, I'm at a higher level than you. We need to get this, this done, right? So really fascinating, really fascinating. So the Harper fighter says, yeah, we've had a rough time here, right? But the reality is, I've never led a party before. I'm with the Harpers. I want to, I've helped them, but I've never led an entire quest for them. And these other Harpers are following me, right? Because I was chosen as the leader by the Harpers. Do you remember a while ago in game where the Harpers were like, we want you to show up and be a Harper? You didn't show up, so now you can shut up. I'm the leader. Right? And he goes, wait, it says, listen, I understand you're leading because the Harpers gave you the leadership, but the reality is you don't know what you're doing and people are getting hurt. So I'm going to lead, right? And so then, this was the player character moment. The Harper fighter said, one of three things is going to happen. You can go back to Waterdeep right now. Just get up and actually take any provisions you need. We'll even give you, I'll even pay you 20 gold per day that you've gone with us to pay for your time. You can go back to Waterdeep right now, right? Or you can continue with us and you do what I say because I was chosen as the leader on this group and I'm a Harper. When it was your turn to show up as a Harper, you didn't. So now you can shut up because the Harper's leading, right? You either show up or you shut up, but you got to choose. You don't get to do both. You don't get squawk and lead Harpers if you haven't done nothing for the Harpers and you turn the Harpers down. You're not a member, right? Very interesting, right? So and it says so, or you could stay with us and you do every single thing I say when I say it, or you could draw a blade, and one of our corpses is going to feed the next tree in the Neverwinter Forest. And the Dungeon Master shut it down. He's like, we're going to break for now. I'll call you guys for a session next week, but tonight's game is done. And that was his last session. I was like, I'm so glad that I've had this opportunity to learn from you, Dungeon Master. It makes me feel a lot better that I'm not the only person who has these kind of problems at their table, right? And it was a very nice moment, and I really felt good that I got to learn, from this Dungeon Master. And so here's my question. So one, I didn't want to make it weird with this guy, right? And so I asked a few other questions. I might do videos about them, and he had some great answers. But the other thing is, I didn't even, when I left, I wasn't like, here's when we're meeting next. I was like, I'll let him, send me an email where I'll show up at the next end of his game and, ask him how it went or whatever. But I didn't want to overwhelm the guy, So that's where it ended, right? I got some really good answers. I have a question. Who was right? The Harper fighter or the Harper fighter who didn't have the ability to lead but had the authority to lead? Or the Freedom Ranger who had the ability to lead, but when he was put in position to get the authority, turned it down, right? So does a non-Harper who has the ability to lead, is it right for them to lead Harpers? Or is it right for a far less skilled, less capable person who has Harper membership? Is it right for them to lead? That is my question to you. I have my answer, but I really want to hear yours first. All that is what's happened to me recently. I just wanted to share it with you. Thank you for letting me share it with you. I am very eager to hear your answer. Who was right? The Freedom Ranger or the Harper fighter? I'm eager to hear your where you think this should land. Thank you for letting me share that with you, and have a wonderful millennium.